You slide the massive aluminum roasting pan into the cavity, staring intensely through the smudged, double-pane glass at an $80 prime rib. The bright blue digital readout smugly flashes 350 degrees. You wipe your hands, turn your back, and walk away expecting a masterpiece. 2 agonizing hours later, you pull that heavy metal handle, fully expecting a blast of blistering heat and sizzling fat to hit your face. Instead, you get a lukewarm, depressing breeze. The meat is a flabby, gray, tepid disaster. The meal is utterly ruined, and you are left staring into a metal box that is actively lying to you. The financial threat hits immediately. Because tomorrow morning you are calling a guy exactly like me to write a $400 estimate just to tell you the machine is mechanically totaled. You probably think your lower heating element suddenly burned out and snapped in half. It absolutely did not. You are just the latest casualty of an industry-wide transition away from physical, mechanical reality into a deliberate, mathematically calculated wallet extraction event. The temperature is entirely a fiction. We are going to violently rip open the hidden failure point buried deep in the back wall. We will expose the parts bundling money extraction trick that turns a cheap 5-minute swap into a second mortgage payment, and reveal the dark technician's secret about why your grandmother's cast iron stove never lied to her. I call this engineered disaster the silicon thermal trap. The physics here are intentionally rigged. Look closely at the modern showroom floor. You instantly fall for the sleek, dark stainless steel interior with the hidden bake element tucked completely under the floor panel. It looks pristine, smooth, and incredibly easy to wipe down. But grab a flashlight and notice the hollow, flimsy, pencil-thin aluminum spike shoved aggressively up in the extreme top left corner of the ceiling. They intentionally relocated the primary temperature probe. 30 years ago, that vital sensor was a heavy, thick copper rod anchored dead center, projecting right over your food where the actual baking happens. Now, it sits trapped in a dead pocket of completely stagnant air. Here is the precise chain reaction that ruins your dinner. You turn the dial. The oven violently cycles on. The initial blast of heat rises rapidly and aggressively pulls right against the ceiling sheet metal. That ultra-cheap, hypersensitive thermistor instantly absorbs the heat and screams at the master control board that the box is sitting at a perfect 350 degrees, commanding the electrical relays to cut the power immediately. Meanwhile, down in the center of the cavity where your heavy glass pan actually sits, the ambient air is hovering at a miserable, dangerous 280 degrees. You end up pulling out heavy, pale, dense cakes that sag miserably in the middle, like wet concrete, and expensive roasts that remain dangerously raw against the bone. You bleed mid-hundreds, continuously replacing pristine heating elements, desperately trying to chase a phantom heat drop that simply does not exist. Any guy who hauls a tool bag into 50 kitchens a week will tell you the same thing. We check that flimsy top mounting bracket first because it inevitably warps, twists, and completely fails under its own unsupported weight. The hardware lies to the software. But the real grift starts behind the back panel. You willingly pay a massive retail premium for the monolithic glass tablet display, with the integrated Wi-Fi recipe app and the complex digital offset calibration feature. It feels exactly like a NASA command center right in your kitchen. Here is the brutal mechanical reality hiding behind the glass. That factory logic board is permanently choked into a microscopic, unforgiving electrical variance window. Over 18 short months of normal, weekly household baking, the cheap metal shielding on that flimsy rear probe physically degrades from the constant, extreme thermal expansion and contraction. The internal electrical resistance values drift by just a few microscopic OEMs. It is an entirely natural physical change that older ovens simply ignored. But the modern mainboard aggressively refuses to accept the new analog signal. It instantly decides the probe is lying, initiates a hard electronic lockout, and maliciously refuses to send a single volt of power down to the baking relays. You will hear the heavy mechanical relays clicking wildly behind the digital clock face, a violent, rhythmic ticking like a panicked heartbeat before the entire touchscreen goes black and flashes an incomprehensible, fatal error code. Did you really think that massive glass touchscreen was built to survive a 500-degree self-cleaning cycle? Now you are trapped paying for a locked, proprietary main logic board that costs vastly more than a reliable budget machine used to cost brand new just 10 years ago. The brain fries its own nerves. This is where the thermodynamics bury you. You love the whisper-quiet cooling fans hiding completely out of sight under the front lip of the console. What you absolutely do not see is the main relay control board mounted exactly 3 measly inches above the primary oven exhaust vent, without a single shred of proper heat shielding to protect it. The corporate engineers saved exactly 14 cents per unit by intentionally omitting a thin strip of thermal foil tape. Every single time you crank the dial to roast a whole chicken, the oven violently vents 400-degree exhaust air straight up through that tiny gap. The flimsy, brittle plastic housing wrapped tightly around the printed circuit board directly absorbs that brutal, punishing thermal load. The microscopic solder joints holding the massive power relays to the board begin to physically turn spongy, flaking away like wet chalk under the constant thermal stress. Eventually, the electrical connection inevitably arcs across the gap. You will smell that unforgettable, dark, burnt electronics odor aggressively seeping out of the vent into your kitchen. A toxic, suffocating blend of melting pennies and scorched plastic. We look at the severe burn marks on the main wiring harnesses and know exactly what zip code of cheap outsourced production we're dealing with today. It routinely forces a total appliance replacement for most families because the resulting electrical short destroys the entire upper wiring harness beyond any reasonable repair. It is the final, fatal stage of the silicon thermal trap. They bake the board, not the bread. The repair pipeline is fundamentally broken by design. Step 1. The independent technician arrives at your house, violently pulls the rear sheet metal panel off the machine, and uses a diagnostic multimeter to confirm the $10 temperature probe is completely dead. This is exactly how they squeeze the margins. Step 2. He attempts to independently requisition that specific, isolated, broken component, but the corporate parts distributor aggressively blocks the sale, strictly offering the tiny sensor permanently clamped and fused to the entire master wiring harness. Watch how fast the manufacturer's math changes. Step 3. You are forced to stare in disbelief at a devastating invoice for a sprawling, complex octopus of copper wiring you absolutely do not need, mathematically forcing you to drag the entire heavy cooking unit out to the curb in total defeat. They traded reliable cooking for an electronic dog and pone show. Nobody signs up to bake in a roulette wheel. Here is your uncompromised dumb appliance counterstrike checklist. Keep this phone screen simple when you walk into the retail appliance store today. Buy heavy analog mechanical control knobs. Avoid digital glass touchscreens entirely today. Refuse Wi-Fi connected smart cooking modules. Look for exposed lower heating bake elements. Find the heaviest, ugliest metal base model. Here's the part they leave out of the shiny brochure. You do absolutely not need a complex computer operating system to roast a chicken. You need raw, stupid, reliable mechanical heat. Stop blindly funding their engineered failures. Subscribe to the channel so you can finally stop bleeding your paycheck to corporate desk jockeys who have never turned a wrench in their lives. Stop feeding your hard-earned grocery budget into the silicon thermal trap just to watch it burn.